and welcome back to the Haunted Mario podcast. We are on episode 15, and we are joined today by Haunted Peach.
Hi, everyone.
On today's episode, we're going to be talking about our recent trip up to Virginia City, Nevada for the 7th annual Virginia City ParaCon hosted by Douglas Carnahan. We will be going over our experiences during the investigation portions of the event, as well as showcasing some of the beautiful footage that we captured on our way up to Virginia City, including the Manzanar World War II Japanese relocation camp. We will also definitely be highlighting some of the EVP captures that we managed to get at some of the locations that we investigated. Now, as you can see from some of the footage you're seeing here, we definitely did a road trip up to Virginia City, Nevada, taking Highway 395 all the way up. I would definitely say that it was a rather eventful start of the trip as far as how tired we were. The night before, we went to see the new Guardians of the Galaxy movie, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. We definitely highly recommend that movie. It was awesome. But we unfortunately went to a later showing, and so the movie ended somewhere around midnight. And so when we got home, it was probably around 1 a.m. Now at that point, we had decided that we were going to get up really early because we were going to hit the road before any major traffic would stop us from getting to Virginia City as soon as possible. So unfortunately, when we got home, I kind of hit a second wind and I wasn't really able to sleep much, and I probably slept maybe a total of 20-25 minutes, and eventually I just gave up and just stayed awake, and we gathered all of our gear and hit the road toward Virginia City. Now, for those that don't know, Haunted Peach and I live in Southern California. So going to Virginia City is quite a trek for us. It's at least a 6 to 8 hour drive, depending on how many times we stop. So we hit the road probably around 3 or 4 in the morning.
We hit the road around 3:30.
But yeah, it was about 3:30 in the morning. We started driving. We stopped by one of our favorite places to eat, which was still open at that time, which was King Taco, and we bought some delicious tacos to basically be our road trip food of choice for the entire trip. And so we officially hit the open road around 4:30 in the morning, and we were just driving through dark desert for most of that time until the sun came up. As you can see from some of the pictures here that we captured of the sunrise, it was quite beautiful. Being that we left early enough, we were able to make it to Manzanar around, I would say, 8:30 in the morning, and we didn't realize that Manzanar doesn't really open until like 10 in the morning on the weekend. So unfortunately, while we were able to drive the trail, as you can see by some of the footage that we're showcasing here, we really weren't able to do any kind of investigating because Block 14, which is the place where we captured that very compelling EVP last year, that was all locked up. So we couldn't go into that building. On top of that, on that day, we unfortunately didn't have time to stop by the cemetery because we were more concerned about just getting some footage and booking it to Virginia City. So by the time we left Manzanar, it was around 9:30 in the morning, about 30 minutes before the place officially opened, but we decided to just hit the road instead. So we booked it and made it to Virginia City, Nevada. We stopped along a few places, including Silver Lake, as you can see here. We actually managed to see our very first waterfall, not in person because that would have been one hell of a trek up the mountains, but from our vantage point we were able to zoom in and actually record the waterfall. So take a look at that. That's quite beautiful there. It's funny because we could see this from all the way down the road when we were heading up to Silver Lake. And it was just interesting that that our camera was even able to zoom in and record it like that. But anyway, the reason we're mentioning Manzanar is because, unfortunately, well, Haunted Peach, would you say we screwed up on Manzanar?
I would say we screwed up on Manzanar.
Yeah, big time. So, as I mentioned before, we left Manzanar on Saturday at 9:30 a.m., 30 minutes before they opened. We had made the decision to just hit the road and book it to Virginia City. And our thought process was, well, we'll just go back on Sunday. They'll be open and we can investigate on Sunday on our way back home. No problem. Well, there was a problem. The problem was that Virginia City was hit by one hell of a nasty storm on the night that we were investigating. Haunted Peach, how crazy would you say that freaking storm was?
I would say the storm was so crazy that when we actually got out of the car to go to our hotel room, both of us ran with everything to the door, and by the time we got into the hallway, we were already soaked.
Yeah, it was it was flash flood warnings, high winds. The winds had to be kicking up to about 75, 80 miles an hour. It was so ridiculously cold. The reason we're talking about this is because the event had us plan to investigate the Virginia City Cemetery that night. Well, because of the storm, we weren't actually able to investigate the cemetery. So what ended up happening was we investigated 3 locations: the Delta Saloon, the Bonanza Saloon, and the McKay Mansion. So since we weren't able to investigate the cemetery, Haunted Peach and I got up early the following day and we did our own investigation of the cemetery, at least a small portion of the cemetery, and we'll talk about that here in a moment. But the reason we're mentioning all of this is because having to do this actually made us leave later than we should have. Well, as we had planned the day before, we were going to stop by Manzanar on our way home so that we can investigate Block 14 and the cemetery. Well, we made it to Manzanar, and I would say we got there around 4:35. So we go to Manzanar, as you can see here by the video I managed to record. We went into Block 14 and I did this video basically explaining the circumstances of the year prior when it came to that one EVP that we caught. Well, as we were walking around in there, sort of looking around, and I was recording the video, Haunted Peach, could you just explain what happened at that point?
Well, what happened was, after Haunted Mario recorded that footage, I noticed that one of the park rangers was standing by the door where we were standing in. And at first we wrote it off as perhaps she just wanted to see what we were doing. However, when I brought it up to Haunted Mario, he went and he asked her, and she was waiting for us because it was time to close the blocks.
Yeah, well, much to our dismay, it appears that we made it a little too late to Manzanar. As Haunted Peach pointed out, the park ranger advised us that the blocks, or at least the buildings, were all being closed at 4:45. Lo and behold, as I looked down at my non-existent watch, it was 4:50. So she was literally standing in the doorway, watching me record, watching us talk, as basically just waiting there to tell us, hey, could you guys hurry it up? We need to close up this place already. And I was very disappointed, to say the least. But she did inform us that while the buildings were being closed at 4:45 p.m., that the remainder of the grounds would be open until sunset. So we thought, okay, well, we definitely didn't get to do an investigation in the buildings. Let's trek it over to the cemetery and do another recording and see if we can capture another compelling EVP like we did last year at the memorial. So we went to the cemetery and we set up our recorders right on the memorial. And just as we started recording, Haunted Peach, what happened?
A car pulls up and out pours about 4 people from this car coming up into the cemetery.
Yep, and boy were they loud. So as we're trying to record an EVP session at the memorial, all we can hear is their talking and their laughter. Unfortunately, the recording that we tried to do at the memorial site was heavily contaminated by their voices, so we ended up not being able to capture anything. We kind of took that as a sign to just call it quits and go, so we basically just hit the road again and headed back home. So that's basically the story of our failure at Manzanar this year. On the first day, we were too early and too eager to get to Virginia City that we missed out on an opportunity to investigate the place to ourselves. And then on the second day, we were just too late. So that is a lesson well learned. We definitely won't be making that mistake again. Yeah, we just wanted to talk about that because we know that we had promised it on our last podcast that we would go to Manzanar. Well, we did. We just didn't get to investigate the way we wanted to. So that's okay. Manzanar is not going anywhere. That is still a free location that anyone can visit. Investigate at your own risk and discretion. Just remember that the place is a museum. Respect the property and the grounds. Make sure that you're just doing everything in a very discreet manner and in a very respectful manner if you ever go there. So moving on, the Virginia City ParaCon event. So while we did make it to Virginia City, we, just as years before, unfortunately we weren't able to see many of the speakers. In fact, this time we weren't able to see any. And that was mainly due to the fact that we were just so beyond exhausted from not really having slept the night before and just making that drive all the way to Virginia City. We were beat. So when we got there, we did our check-in and got the information as to what locations we were going to investigate. And for about an hour and a half or so, we just kind of chatted it up with some of our friends and colleagues from the paranormal world that we've met over the years. So that was a good time. So night rolls around and we're going to investigate 3 locations. Now, the way that we're going to go through this is we're going to start with the least active location and move up to the most active location. So these will all be out of order. We'll definitely start off by saying that the McKay Mansion was not a disappointment. It never has been. Every time we've investigated the McKay Mansion, we always come away with something pretty spectacular. And this time is no different. And actually it's in a location in the McKay Mansion that we hadn't investigated before. Anyway, let's get on with it. Let's start with the Delta Saloon. So the Delta Saloon is very famous for the suicide table. It's a table where an individual nicknamed Black Jake actually lost over $70,000 in one night of gambling at the suicide table. And as a result of losing so much money, he ended up committing suicide. So, I mean, that in itself has a level of infamy behind that location as far as the old Western tales are concerned. So Haunted Peach and I investigated this place. This is our second location of the night. And we tried our hand at doing an EVP session at the suicide table. We even revisited the utility closet that is on the second floor where we caught some interesting EVPs last year. We investigated in the chapel area as well. But unfortunately, after reviewing all of our recordings, we didn't come up with anything. And while we were investigating, there really wasn't any feeling that there was anything paranormal going on that night, at least for our group. Now, that may not be the same experience for the other groups, but I know that for ours in particular, at least for Haunted Peach and I, there wasn't anything really going on. So from the Delta Saloon, we then got the opportunity to investigate the Bonanza Saloon. Now, the Bonanza Saloon is a new location that we had not investigated in years prior, so this was a new experience for us in general. We did an EVP session at the bar. We did some recordings in the main dining / bar area of the saloon. And then based on a tip that we got from an investigator at the McKay Mansion, we actually went down into the basement of the Bonanza Saloon. And as you'll see from some of the footage here, we found out that the basement actually is the foundation of the building, and the foundation is partly made out of these large barrels filled with dirt and cement, which we had never seen before in any building. So that was strange enough in and of itself. But there was a claim that there's a male spirit that hangs around the basement, and the claim is that he is a little too touchy-feely with women. What was the claim that they were talking about, Haunted Peach? What does he do to women?
One of the claims that they have there is he likes to grope women and slap their butts.
Yeah, so the claim is that just as Haunted Peach says, this spirit is notorious for groping women or slapping their behinds. Yeah, so we definitely made it very aware that we would not tolerate that kind of activity, and that ended up not happening, but there was definitely something there with us. The crazy part is that we actually did capture an EVP. Now, I will explain what happened at the moment because I remember it quite vividly. So Haunted Peach and I were in the basement at the foundation area, site, whatever you want to call it, and Haunted Peach was standing about 10 feet away from me, and we were talking about the foundation, and there are some cemented areas, but in that particular area there's a lot of dirt, and so it's very uneven, and it's very easy to be off balance. So we were talking about that, and as we were talking, and mind you, let me just state that there were only 4 of us in the basement. Haunted Peach and I were the only ones that were in that specific area where the foundation is. The other 2 investigators were at the other side of the building, or the other side of the basement, and they were investigating this little side door that led under the stairway that led to the basement. So they were at least a good 20, maybe 30 yards away from us. So what occurred could not have been those 2 investigators. So as Haunted Peach and I are talking amongst each other, I heard very loudly over my left ear something whisper, like a male or someone whisper into my ear, or just over my ear. Now, what it said, I have no idea. And we've reviewed the EVP, and we're not sure what's being spoken. We just know that I did definitely hear this disembodied whisper over my left ear. There's no way that anyone could have snuck up behind me, because from where I was standing, there's just no way that anyone could walk without being in my vantage point of sight. Fortunately for us, we did capture this EVP. Even though we don't know what's being spoken, it is something that did occur. As you can hear in the recording, I do tag it, the unfortunate part is we don't know what it's saying. So we're going to go ahead and play it for you now, and then I'll play the isolated EVP itself on its own so that you can hear it more clearly. Now, no major editing has been done to the EVP audio recordings that you're going to hear. The only piece of editing that has been done to the audio clips that you'll hear in these recordings is volume amplification. I have not reduced any noise. I have not taken any white noise out of them. I haven't done any noise removal. The only thing that you'll hear is the raw audio of the recording, but just amplified a little bit so it's louder. That's the only thing. And the reason that we do this is so that we keep the authentication of the EVP clips that we share. So again, here is the full audio clip of that moment, and then we'll go back and play just the isolated clip. Here it is.
Yeah, foundation's really weird.
Yeah. Well, it's the older foundation too.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, just want to tag that I heard an exhale behind me. Or someone whisper something behind me. Yeah, foundation's really weird.
Yeah. Well, it's the older foundation too.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, just want to tag that I heard an exhale behind me. Or someone whisper something behind me. Yeah, foundation's really weird.
Yeah. Well, it's the older foundation too.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, just want to tag that I heard an exhale behind me. Or someone whisper something behind me.
Okay, so that was the audio clip. As you can hear, Haunted Peach is talking, and as she's talking, you'll hear the loud whispered voice, and then you'll hear me acknowledge it. And yeah, I have no idea what it's saying. Haunted Peach, do you remember this moment? Do you remember ever even hearing this whisper come through?
No, I don't even remember hearing the whisper come through.
Yeah, that's the even weirder part, is that I was the only one that heard it. And subsequently, we ended up capturing this on both audio recorders that we had running at the time, so that Haunted Peach wasn't able to hear this, but I was, and that it was captured on 2 recorders is even more astounding to me. So yeah, that was definitely a great capture. Now I'm going to go ahead and play just the isolated clip for you so you can hear it. Again, the only thing that I have done is I've amplified the volume so it's louder. Have a listen at this, and if you know what's being spoken in the EVP clip, please feel free to comment that in the comment section, because we're up in arms as to what it's saying. Here is the isolated clip.
Well, it's the older foundation too.
Yeah.
So. 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 Well, it's the older foundation too.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, that was the isolated EVP clip. As you can hear, that whisper was quite loud enough for the audio recorders to pick up. It was definitely loud enough for me to hear because it was right over my left ear. And yeah, that was a very interesting moment in our investigation of the Bonanza Saloon. Now, there was one other EVP clip that came out of the Bonanza Saloon in the basement, but unfortunately that is sort of a Class C EVP, and we're not very keen on sharing something that's not that great as far as audio quality. So we'll just leave that one up as a mystery, but we did definitely capture 2 EVPs. The second one was a Class C EVP, and we'll probably revisit that sometime later on in a future podcast. So let's move on to a location that we were not able to investigate as part of the ParaCon, and that is the Virginia City Cemetery. Now, the name of the cemetery is called the Silver Terrace Cemetery, and as you can see by some of the footage we captured, it is located at the very end of Virginia City itself. It overlooks a lot of the town, and it's quite a beautiful setting very deserving final resting place for a lot of people. This cemetery has some of the oldest graves of the town and of Nevada. There are graves there dating back to the 1800s. Again, for those that know, Virginia City was a very popular mining town during the gold rush and silver rush era, and so a lot of the graves there are from the people that lived during that time. So Haunted Peach and I went to this sort of subsection of the cemetery that was dedicated to the firemen and volunteer firemen of Virginia City. And we came upon this one specific grave. As you can see in the picture here, this is the grave of Marantine Giandoni, and if I'm mispronouncing that, I do apologize. And so we set up 2 recorders and started recording a very brief EVP session at that particular gravesite. And subsequently, this was the only recording that we had at the cemetery, mainly because the weather started to kick up and it started to rain a little bit, so we had to go back and leave the cemetery. But there are some important things to notate here before playing this clip. Haunted Peach, when we were recording this particular EVP session, what were some of the important things that we had to notate for the audio recording as far as our surroundings were concerned?
The most important thing that we had to notate was not only the wind, but the birds around us, any voices being carried along as well.
Yeah, so we were definitely battling against a lot of elements when it came to being able to tag outside noises that would cause contamination. So as Haunted Peach mentioned, wind was a huge factor. Along with that, there is also the contamination of other people talking. Now, I will say that Haunted Peach and I were the only 2 people in this cemetery. As we were walking into the cemetery grounds themselves, in total, there were 2 people that were there before us, and they left. So as we were walking in, they were on their way out. And when we got to the firemen's subsection of the cemetery, they were already gone. The people that Haunted Peach is referring to actually lived in some houses that were across the hill on the other side of Virginia City. And we could see them and we could hear them talking. So as you'll hear in the recording, you'll hear voices in the background. Those are people that are at least a good quarter-mile away from us. The thing was that it was so quiet, minus the wind, it was so quiet that their voices could be heard. But they were talking very loudly, and so it was easy for us not to mistake them as EVP because we knew that they were talking. So that was just a few things to take into account before I play this audio clip. So we're at the gravesite and we're asking questions. And a question is asked about the names of the children that were apparently buried with Miss Marantine Giandoni. On the tombstone, if you can read it there, it says that she was buried with her 2 children, one who was 6 years and 10 months old, and the other was just a baby. So a very sad situation. But on the tombstone, Haunted Peach, what did you notice about the tombstone?
The tombstone looked like it had fallen sometime during the years, and it was repaired because it was cracked in 3 areas, and then that where the cracks were and the repair were, it covered up the names of the children that were buried with the mother.
Yeah, so the names of the children were actually not even on the tombstone anymore. So you'll hear in the recording we ask for the names of the children, and then you'll hear a voice come through that answers us. And this is definitely an EVP that for us came out of left field. Haunted Peach, when you first heard this EVP, what were your first thoughts? Without revealing what is being spoken in it.
I was amazed. I was amazed at what I heard. It's something that you and I don't catch very often.
Yeah, it's one of those sort of holy grail type of EVPs, and yeah, I'll let the recording sort of speak for itself. So make sure you have your volume up. Because of the wind, I wasn't able to amplify the sound as much with the full clip, but the EVP itself will definitely be amplified when we review that particular portion. So here's the full recording of that moment. Listen very carefully. You'll hear our question, you'll hear voices in the background, then you'll hear the wind, and after the wind stops, you'll hear a child's voice, and it's a direct reply to us. And we did not hear this at the time. Oh, and by the way, there is what sounds like a scream in there. Please disregard that. That was a bird that was flying overhead when this happened. But this voice occurs during that moment, and so you'll be able to hear what is being spoken. And here it is.
What were the names of your children? What were the names of your children? What were the names of your children?
Okay, so that was the full recording of the clip. Now, if you listen carefully, you'll be able to hear that there was a child's voice that spoke through and responded to us. So when I first heard this, I was very taken aback because honestly, because of the wind factor, because of the voices that were off in the distance, the birds flying overhead, the whole shebang, we were very skeptical of capturing anything at the cemetery because of all that. And the fact that a voice came through and responded to us, let alone a child's voice that came through and responded, is incredibly astounding. So here is our analysis of the EVP. There is definitely a child's voice there. It is definitely replying to our question. It is definitely an intelligent reply, and in our minds, this is a Class A EVP. So, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and play just the isolated clip, and then we'll go over what is being spoken in the clip. Here it is. Okay, that was the isolated EVP clip, and as you can hear, a child boy is responding to our question. Haunted Peach, when you first heard this, what was the first thing that you heard that boy reply to us?
Peter.
Yes, definitely. It is unmistakably the name Peter. And it's exactly the name that I had heard the first time I heard it. So it was incredible to even capture a name. But there was more to the EVP clip. Haunted Peach, what does he say after Peter?
And my sister.
Yes. So the EVP goes, Peter and my sister. Now, we're going to replay the audio clip for you so you can hear again what is being spoken. But Haunted Peach and I are 100% sure that this is an authentic EVP and that it's 100% paranormal. It came way out of left field, and it's a child, presumably the child that's buried there, saying Peter and my sister. And the crazier part about this particular EVP is that I tried doing some research into Maritime Giandoni, and unfortunately I couldn't find any lineage records as far as public records. Now maybe I just wasn't looking in the right places, but I definitely tried looking at obituaries, and I tried looking at Virginia City Public Records. The only mention that I could get of Maritime Giandoni was in some San Francisco newspaper from way back in the 1800s about some bank transition or something like that. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get any information on next of kin, so who her children were, I have no idea. And unfortunately, as Haunted Peach mentioned earlier, and as you can see from the photo, the portion where the children's names would have been was broken off. That's no longer there. So the real name of their children is an entire mystery to us. But is it very possible that one of the children's name was Peter and the other child was his younger sister? It's very possible. And how coincidental that it would mention that it's Peter and another sibling when the tombstone itself says that Maritime Giandoni was buried with her 2 children. So all things added up, this is definitely one of our best EVP captures of all time. Here is that clip one more time. Okay, so that was the EVP clip. Now, that was definitely one of the best EVP clips we've ever captured. But we're going to move on to the last location we're going to talk about, and that is the one that has never disappointed us. It is the McKay Mansion. The McKay Mansion, in past years, has been quite an experience to investigate. We have experienced many different types of phenomenon at the McKay Mansion, including giant shadow figures, disembodied voices, seeing apparitions. So returning back to the McKay Mansion, we kind of already knew what to expect. That being said, there were a couple of areas of the mansion that we got to investigate that we have not investigated in the past. And 2 of those specific areas were upstairs at the very top floor of the McKay Mansion in what is known as the playroom and what we dubbed as the child's room. So these 2 rooms were extra areas we had not investigated in the past, and we got to investigate this time. So out of the 2 rooms, the most active was the playroom. So Haunted Peach and I were in a group of about 10 people, half of which were downstairs in the parlor and in the lower dining room. So as Haunted Peach and I were in the playroom, there were a handful of other investigators investigating in the rooms across from us, which were divided by this long hallway. And they were in Mr. McKay's room and Mrs. McKay's room. So we could definitely hear them the entire time that we were investigating in the playroom. The reason we mention this is because during some of these recordings that we'll play for you, you will definitely hear those other investigators talking. The fortunate part for us is that these EVPs, or these pieces of audio recording, are picking up stuff that is happening inside the playroom itself. So before we get started in talking about some of the EVPs that we captured in the playroom, Haunted Peach, could you just go through some of the types of things that we experienced while we were in the playroom?
We experienced tapping. The tapping, we heard it come from the window, and Haunted Mario and I went through everything that we could think of that it could be to debunk it, and unfortunately we weren't able to debunk it. The window itself was firmly in the frame, and there was nothing that can visibly hit the actual window to make that tapping noise. The next one was cold spots. Now the first one that we experienced, it was Haunted Mario that experienced it, and it was around his hand. Haunted Mario called me over to feel where the cold spot was, and we also attempted to debunk it. However, even with the storm and the wind, there was no way that it could be wind, because when wind comes into a room, it blows in through a solid spot and it stays on that particular path.
Right, so as Haunted Peach was explaining, there were a lot of random occurrences that occurred while we were in the playroom. Little things that were personal experiences that we didn't necessarily fully debunk, but we definitely did our best to try and debunk. One of those being cold spots. And these cold spots would appear in random places within the playroom. The first one for me appeared around my left hand as I was at the foot of the bed that was inside of the playroom. And I could feel this area of just cold density that was surrounding my hand within the playroom. Now the night was already cold because of the storm, and the wind was definitely blowing, but the thing was, there was no wind coming through the windows. There was only one window in that room, and there was an open doorway that led to the hallway. And the doorway had the door removed, so it's not like there was wind coming through from the outside. And we tested the wind coming through the windows in various other rooms prior to going to the playroom. So it was very interesting. In fact, the cold spots would move. They would move to a different centralized location, and they would stay there for about a minute and then would dissipate and disappear. We don't necessarily know what was causing the cold spots, but they did definitely occur at different times throughout our time in the playroom. And near the end, we actually had the opportunity to have someone else, another pair of investigators, come in and actually feel the cold spots that we were feeling. So I'm going to play just a portion of the cold spots that we were feeling with full audio, as you'll see here in the video. And you can see the experience that we had as far as the cold spots are concerned. Here's some of that footage. Come here. Take the rig. Here. Record by my left hand.
By your left hand?
Yes. And in fact, I want you to put your hand there too. Feel the cold that's right here. Feel it. Right where my hand is.
Oh yeah, that's cold. That's like outside cold.
Yeah, and right now the wind is not blowing. There is no airflow, but it actually feels like there's airflow, dense airflow around my hand. Now the wind's blowing. Wow.
Now were you trying to tell us hello? Can you make that tap again?
Okay. So my hand, my right hand, so my left hand still feels the cold spot, right? It's moving. It's more here, closer to you.
I don't know. Maybe it's a little child.
Maybe. Are you recording?
Yeah.
On my right, I have my right hand sticking out over here. I feel nothing.
Walking back a little.
And I'm not, I don't feel it on my left anymore. Now it's on my right.
I'm curious.
Are you trying to shake hands with me? That's weird.
For the
I don't
recorder.
feel it anymore over here. We've had a few cold spots. Yeah. Now, obviously the wind's blowing, but there's no real air coming through because these curtains aren't moving. Yeah. And I was standing here. Here it is.
Cold spot?
Yeah, come feel it. Right here where my hand is. Mm-hmm. It's like denser and colder.
Yeah. A little bit. Yeah, right there.
And it moves.
But it's not like frigid. It's just like
Mm-mm.
colder. Yeah.
It's actually just got colder. Okay, so as you can see in some of that footage, we were feeling some cold spots in random locations, and even at some point, a couple of other investigators came in and felt the same thing. We don't really have a true explanation for that, so we're just going to label that as just unexplained experiences at this moment. The second thing that Haunted Peach pointed out were these tapping noises that we would hear on the window. Some important things to notate about that is that the window leads to a balcony that wraps around the entire McKay mansion. Outside of that, there are no tree branches. There wasn't anything that could have caused the tapping on the window other than maybe the wind itself rattling the window. But as Haunted Peach pointed out, we definitely did take that into account. The window was fairly firm in the frame, and so the sounds that we were hearing of this tapping, they came at random times, but the more significant times came at moments where we actually asked questions. Throughout the audio recordings, there were sounds of tapping picked up, but at those times you could hear that it was the wind causing a rattling of the window. And those particular instances we definitely tagged in the recording. The ones that happened after we would ask specific questions, those sounded more like a fingernail tapping the window. And there are these laced curtains that go over the windows that we could physically see. As the wind would blow, they would not move. So there definitely wasn't any airflow coming through from the outside, which made even the cold spots we were experiencing more unexplainable. So getting back to the tapping, it sounded like someone with a fingernail was tapping on the window trying to get our attention. What they were trying to accomplish with that, we don't know. We honestly don't even know that it's a paranormal experience. It's just they are just some personal experiences that we wanted to notate. Another important thing to note about those moments where the tapping came through is that when those specific taps occurred, there was no wind blowing that would have caused it. So the fact that they are there with no wind blowing adds a little more to the unexplained category of the recordings we're about to play. And so I have 3 of the most significant taps that happened during that investigation. I'm going to play them all for you here in succession so that you can hear the moments that these taps were heard and our reactions to it. So here are the clips in their entirety.
Did you like candy? Talking in the other room.
I want to tag. Sound like there's a tap over here.
I heard it.
Yeah.
On the window, right?
Yes, and that wasn't me. The wind wasn't going at that time.
I thought that was you.
No.
Were you trying to get our attention?
Tag the tapping.
Yeah. And the wind was not blowing that time.
Did you need help getting up on the little rocking horse? Because I don't blame you. I would go on that too.
I can help you up. I'm pretty strong. Okay. The wind was not blowing that time.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was the clips of the window tapping instances that we heard during our investigation of the playroom. But that was not the only type of possible paranormal activity that we experienced. Then the next clip that we're going to share with you is quite an interesting one. It's a very easy to miss EVP that we managed to capture in the playroom. This was only captured on one of the recorders, which was placed on a rocking horse that was in the playroom. As you will hear from the recording, you will hear that I asked about what would have been the child's favorite toy. And you'll hear a response before I start talking again. it's pretty astounding what it's saying. So I'm going to play the EVP clip in its entirety, and you'll want to listen for just before I start speaking the second time. I'm going to replay the clip a few times just so that you can get the idea of what's happening here. Here it is.
What was your favorite toy in here? Let's record the horse, the rocking horse. What was your favorite toy in here? Let's record the horse, the rocking horse. What was your favorite toy in here? Let's record the horse, the rocking horse. What was your favorite toy in here? Let's record the horse, the rocking horse.
Okay, so that was the EVP clip of the rocking horse recorder that we had running in the room. So as you'll hear in the EVP clip, I'll ask what the favorite toy was in the room, and then you'll hear a very brief response before I start talking. And when I start talking, I basically revert my attention back to the rocking horse. So after analyzing this recording, or at least the first time I heard the recording, I definitely knew there was something there. And it took a few listens to really make out what was being spoken, but it's pretty obvious what it's responding. So at this point, I'm going to play the isolated clip, and then we're going to review what is being spoken in that EVP. Here it is.
Let's record the horse, the rocking horse. 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 Let's record the horse, the rocking horse.
Okay, so that was the isolated clip. Now, Haunted Peach, when I first played this clip for you, you picked up on the word actually much faster than I did. Without me telling you what it was when I initially played it for you, what was the word that you heard being spoken in that EVP clip?
It was the word horse.
Yeah, it was definitely the word horse. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was just that the horse in the room was such a big item, and it was a rocking horse that it drew my attention. It certainly wasn't intentional for me to put so much focus on the horse, but listening to this EVP clip, it makes more sense, and my attention was automatically diverted to the horse. That maybe subconsciously I heard this EVP and just didn't realize it. But the weird thing is, the person that is saying the word horse says it just before I say, let's focus on the horse. So we're gonna play this EVP clip for you again, and listen very closely. Just before I start talking, you'll hear someone say the word horse. Here's the EVP clip again.
Let's record the horse, the rocking horse. 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 Let's record the horse, the rocking horse.
Okay, so that was the EVP clip of the word horse. Now you might think to yourselves, is this really all that you captured in the playroom? And the answer is definitely not. So we're going to go ahead and review our favorite EVP clip of the entire investigation experience that we had at Virginia City. And this has to be hands down in the top 3 EVP captures that we've had of all time. So, just to give a little idea of what happened in this particular moment, let's go back to the Bonanza Saloon and the disembodied whisper that I heard over my left ear. Now, if you remember from that clip, that was a pretty loud whisper, and I was the only one that heard it in that particular moment. Well, in this moment, Haunted Peach and I both heard it with our own ears, and what we at first mistakenly took for someone else whispering was actually not the case. There was no one in and around the playroom that could have caused this particular whisper to sound as clear as it does. And the funny thing about it is, when I initially reviewed this clip, I didn't think anything was being spoken in it. To be quite honest, Haunted Peach, my first impressions were that this audio recording was just some loud exhale. But Haunted Peach actually clarified it for me when she was able to listen to the EVP. And then when I heard it back, I was astounded as to what it was saying. So, without further ado, what we're going to do is just play the full clip in its entirety. Again, you'll hear the entire moment. You'll definitely hear what we heard because we both reacted to it at that moment. So, here is the full recording.
Clear my throat. Whispering. What was that?
What was what?
Did you hear that?
That rant.
No.
I didn't hear
Was that what it was? Maybe it's like the shed out there and we're hearing that.
I don't know.
Clearing my throat. Whispering. What was that?
What was what?
Did you hear that?
That rant.
No.
I didn't hear
Was that what it was? Maybe it's like the shed out there and we're hearing that.
I don't know.
Clearing my throat. Whispering. What was that?
What was what?
Did you hear that?
That rant.
No.
I didn't hear
Was that what it was? Maybe it's like the shed out there and we're hearing that.
I don't know.
Okay, so that was the full clip in its entirety of that particular moment. Now, what you'll hear is this loud whispering voice, and then you'll hear me tag that whisper, but then you'll hear me kind of rethink and go, what the hell was that? And we both heard it at the time, but we didn't know exactly what it was. In fact, we actually thought it was something from outside, a noise from outside that bled through it. It turns out that that wasn't the case. Now, Haunted Peach, when we were in the McKay Mansion, in the playroom, and you heard this noise, what were your first thoughts about what it was?
My first thoughts on what it could be was maybe another investigator. They were just speaking a little too loud, and it just bled through from downstairs. Or that it was just something from the house. Made a standard sound, something normal sound.
Yeah, we definitely didn't think it was right off the bat some kind of disembodied voice. It wasn't until we analyzed the audio recording that we found that it was definitely a disembodied voice, an actual EVP that we managed to capture. And this was captured on both recorders. We're playing the recorder that was on the rocking horse because that one actually managed to capture this EVP clearer. So without further ado, we're going to play just the EVP clip so you can hear what is being spoken. And make no mistake, when we reveal what is being spoken, you'll probably get some chills down your spine. Here is the EVP clip. Okay, so that was the EVP clip, the isolated EVP clip. Now, Haunted Peach, I obviously didn't know what was being spoken because when I played this clip for you, you managed to pick up on something that I totally missed. It totally went over my head. What did you hear was being spoken in this particular EVP?
I heard, "Play with me now."
Yes. So, a loud whispering voice definitely responded, "Play with me now." And I'm actually getting chills right now talking about it because that EVP clip was just so, it was so ridiculous at the moment. We didn't know what to make of it, and when I was reviewing it, I still didn't know what to make of it. And Haunted Peach came through and clarified for me, and wow, what an astonishing capture, which ended up being hands down the most active place of the entire investigation that we had. This particular EVP clip is definitely in our top 3 of all time. So again, what we are hearing is some kind of spirit responding to us saying, "Play with me now." Here is the isolated EVP clip again. Okay, and that was definitely one of the best captures of the entire investigation. We are very happy that we were able to share with all of you in this experience that we had at the Virginia City ParaCon and this podcast special that we've done covering the entire trip for us. Rest assured that next year, or hopefully before next year, we'll be able to return to Virginia City and get more opportunities to investigate different locations of that town. Haunted Peach, are there any final thoughts you want to express about our entire trip over to Virginia City this year?
You know what? Honestly, the trip to Virginia City all the way up is always really fun for me. All the scenery, the layout, and there's a lot of places for us to stop and go and investigate if we want to. But all in all, I had a blast. It's always fun to see our friends in the paranormal.
Yeah, and even just exploring the town in a non-paranormal fashion is fun in and of itself. There are so many shops, antiques, and museums, places that you can venture to just down the main streets of Virginia City. If you want a trip into the Old West, this is definitely one of the places to go. So we definitely look forward to returning to Virginia City and just exploring it the same way that we always have and in new ways in the future. We definitely appreciate all of your support. Thank you for joining us today on this review of our trip to Virginia City. We are still gearing up and getting ready for our cross-country trip to Waverly Hills Sanatorium, and more info will come out regarding that in the future. But until then, thank you for letting us bring you insight into all things paranormal, and just as always, happy hauntings.